Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Tech Tuesday. I'm always so far afraid that I'm going to get that wrong, and I'm going to go. Welcome to Foresight TV, but so far I think I've gotten it right. Jada, who's behind the scenes producing, hasn't slapped my hand about it yet. I've got my friend Michael Skaff. We're going to be talking about technology and AI and all sorts of good things in the senior living industry. But first, this. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. Michael, welcome to Tech Tuesday. You and I have obviously talked a number of times on various live streams, so I'm delighted to have you back. You're at a new company, new position since we last talked. But let's start with a little bit about who you are and your organization, and then we'll jump into technology and senior living.
Absolutely, Steve. Thank you so much for having me on today. It's a pleasure to be on here with you, and I always enjoy our conversations, whether they're virtual or in person. Over the years, it's been great to talk to you about all the things happening in this industry. My name is Michael Skaff. I serve as the Chief Information Officer for Sequoia Living. Sequoia Living has been around since 1958. It's a regional senior living provider, healthcare provider, senior services provider. We operate 4 CCRCs around California, 3 affordable housing communities, 2 senior centers, including the oldest senior center in the U.S., down in Aquatic Park, which is a beautiful location. And we serve thousands of seniors every year in our community services as well. So a very diversified set of services, a rich history, and really focus on providing the best possible care and services and housing for seniors in and around California.
Well, and I would just say I've only been to one of the Sequoia living communities, the one up in Marin County.
Yes.
And you get to go out and look out over the whole bay. Although the most prominent feature, I do have to say, the most prominent feature when you look out of there is San Quentin Prison. It's a long way off, but even at that distance, it's a beautiful, beautiful view.
You have Mount Tamalpais right behind you as well. Yeah. As a Marin native, it holds a special place in my heart too. It is a beautiful location. We have 4 beautiful communities though as well. One in Walnut Creek, Viamonte, one down in Portola Valley. Actually, if you go down Sand Hill Road the other way, away from the venture capital firms, you run into our community up in the hills up there. We have a 40-acre campus up there, and then one in San Francisco as well. So some great communities, vibrant lives, and some exciting operations too.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about where you see the state of technology in the senior living space today.
I would say or characterize it as still emerging. We have a couple of things going on. You and I have talked about this in various forms over the years, as well as fairly recently. I gave a keynote on this a couple of months ago as well. I believe we're approaching an inflection point, Steve, in that senior living operators are now finally mature enough to adopt some of these technologies. The technologies themselves, up until recently, really were not mature themselves. They were not showing or demonstrating the efficacy necessary to convince us as senior living operators that it was worthwhile to implement them and cost effective and showed positive healthcare outcomes, et cetera. That is now changing. There are real data, there are real use cases. So lots of reasons to be optimistic and to move forward with these implementations. And for a long time, reimbursement, at least for the portion of senior living that is healthcare, reimbursement was not lined up behind that either. So those 3 things have now moved into position that really opens up a lot of opportunity in this organization and in all senior living operators, both in the US and globally, to really start adopting and making use of some of these wonderful new tools, either AI-based or not AI-based. We'll talk about that, I believe, in a moment as well. Yeah. But there still are a few areas that senior living and healthcare are not adequately addressing. Things like the digital divide and digital literacy in older adults. That is starting to change demographically. We are seeing more and more of our residents move in that are very tech savvy, that are expecting Wi-Fi, that are expecting technology services as part of their life enrichment, as part of their overall services that they're receiving from us and other senior living operators. And they know more of what is possible, which is great because that both provides the demand and then we can provide the supply there. The other challenge is a lot of the architectural aspects in senior living, which is unfortunately traditionally a very capital intensive business. There's a lot of underinvestment in the capital infrastructure. And I'm not just talking technology in a lot of different aspects. Luckily, Sequoia Living has made great investments in these areas, so we're not as far behind as some of our peers, but there is an opportunity for senior living operators really to invest in even such simple things as more comprehensive Wi-Fi as a foundational layer to make sure that we can offer some of those more interesting and exciting services rather than just basic connectivity.
Well, it's interesting to me that when I first started Foresight and I was speaking and I'd go to conferences and I'd be on a panel and I'd say, okay, how many of you have pervasive Wi-Fi through your communities?
Yeah.
And for a long time, it was less than 50%.
Yes.
And I would tell you that even today, rarely do I come across somebody who has, occasionally I'll talk to residents and it's an ongoing complaint that the Wi-Fi just doesn't have enough bandwidth to support the things they want to do.
It's not just bandwidth, it's also the way these networks were originally built, Steve, was just to cover the staff areas really because they were viewed as staff infrastructure. So staff infrastructure for the electronic health record system, for med management, for the med carts out there and entering healthcare data or other data. So it was really set up as a staff resource, not as a resident resource. So the Wi-Fi networks really were not designed or built to sort of bleed into the resident rooms or the apartments, and thus necessitating a whole re-architecture of these networks and significant additional capital investment in Wi-Fi and switching and all these other sort of core network aspects. But we're going through a transition now where people are saying, oh, it's actually worth it. We need connectivity in the resident rooms because we're offering, X, Y, and Z. We have fall detection, we have resident portals, we have smart entertainment systems, we have all of these different things that now require just something as simple as Wi-Fi.
So one of the things I find myself wondering about is, and let me sort of set the stage. So I'm sure you've been pitched by these, but there are a number of folks out there, emerging companies that are offering Wi-Fi based companions. So you can have a conversation with an AI that feels sort of human or maybe feels a lot human. And so, and I'm pretty skeptical of that. I've played with some of them. I haven't seen one that I really, really like a lot. But one of the things I find myself wondering is, as we get technology, does traditional life enrichment become, this is a different question than that, but does traditional life enrichment become less important?
It doesn't become less important. I've actually had this conversation recently, even internally to Sequoia Living. We just hired some new life enrichment folks. We're investing in more technologies. Our life enrichment team is much more tech savvy and tech enabled and actively participating in the technology infrastructure and conversations around the requirements and needs and uses of these aspects. Because entertainment, you want to be able to do streaming classes or other aspects that really are more sort of online based. People are watching streaming shows like this one, Steve, all the time. Yeah. So it's more tech enabled. So it doesn't replace it. Absolutely not. Part of what we do in senior living writ large is provide life enrichment and ongoing educational opportunities and all the rich, wonderful things and services that keep someone's life or helps support someone's life vibrant and keep it basically give them access to the resources they need to live the life they want on their terms. But yes, more technology is now involved. So it is transforming what that means and what that looks like. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think about Jada, who's producing the show, is the youngest member of my team. And she's super tech savvy, part of what she does here. But I know that she has a lot of interaction online with people and with machines and those kinds of things. And my guess is that if we were to dig into her life, compared with a 20-something-year-old 30 years ago, she actually has a lot less human interaction because of technology, and she can do a lot of that interaction. And that's sort of the world of sort of the young people of today. And I'm wondering, but I think it's becoming the world of older people as well.
I think so too. You also, I didn't speak to the voice platform question that you posed as well, which Yes, there are some wonderful emerging technologies I've tried and been pitched by a bunch of them. I advise a few of them as well. And I think just in the last couple of years, we've seen this remarkable improvement in the capacity of these agents to actively interact with us in more meaningful and more human-like fashion that is more interesting to talk to, frankly, and it is more sort of natural. I have a history here. I was an early employee for an early AI chatbot company 25 years ago, Steve. Back before most people had even heard of a chatbot, wanted a chatbot, anything else. It was much more rudimentary back then, the technology was. But even back then, we could answer questions in natural language. It's just gotten that much better.
Yeah.
These tools are so much easier and more natural to communicate with, and provide a better, not just something to talk to, but it's a better user interface and creates a better user experience for many other solutions and tools sort of underneath or behind the scenes. We're now talking to the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. And the Wizard of Oz is much more capable of responding back to us in a way that is reasonable and interesting. So I am actually very optimistic about these. I've seen such rapid progress, even in just the last 6 to 12 months, around these LLMs and how people are tying voice to these LLMs. So you can have really interesting, sort of engaging, longer conversations than just sort of the ask and answer, much sort of like how we went from Google's or the early search engines, just putting something in and you get a list of results. We're evolving further to a much more sort of dynamic conversation in how we engage with technology. And we're starting to see that as the front end for a lot of services, dining requests, activities. So we're going to see much more rapid evolution there over the next even just year to 2 years, I suspect. So it's a very exciting time for that because we've known it was possible, but the engines, the algorithms behind that haven't been able to keep up with the way we think and the way we sort of converse, and that's changing. So I'm excited about where they are already and also where they're going because yes, young people are engaged more in technology, and as a parent, I actually worry about that because I worry about the social skills, not the least of which through COVID, everybody was shut away for a while, but my kids spent more time in front of a screen than they ever had before. Older adults are also spending more time in front of a screen. There are companies offering solutions that say that they can reduce social isolation and loneliness in older adults. That's wonderful. I also am a big believer in human-to-human interaction and using technology to take everything else out of the way so we can have more of these conversations. But yes, there are pure sort of conversational bots out there that are designed explicitly to call and check on your mom or call and have a conversation, call and let her reminisce about something so she's not lonely. Is that good? It's just different.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is that it's just different. It's easy to look at changes like this, right, and think that they're bad because they're different. And some of them are going to be worse. Some are going to turn out to be worse. Some of them are going to turn out to be a lot better, and we won't know where we go. Michael Russo asked a good question. Do you see any sort of low-hanging fruit that's left unpicked in sort of this engagement arena?
I think we're still in the early days of this, Steve. So yes, in terms of before the voice interaction and sort of bots and natural language stuff caught up with it, we saw resident engagement tools, which is sort of a misnomer for a bunch of technologies crammed together to try and offer services to help engage someone, keep them, in their life enrichment activities, offer them dining options and other things. Now there's a wrapper around many of these with better engagement UI and UX, so that's improving. But there's still a lot of distance to improve there, I'd say. So yes, I think there's still greenfield there, especially on the resident side. There is on the staff side too. We're seeing things like compliance, for example, as a use case around AI. Compliance has always been extremely dry, very difficult, very sort of terse and full of lots of esoteric information. If you can put all that esoteric information behind a much more friendly chatbot that can help you more easily access what you need to know in your own way of asking those questions, there are a lot of opportunities there to make sure that the staff know what they need to be doing. Everything from survey prep to just ongoing compliance and quality and training. There's some great opportunities there.
Yeah, I think about what could be done, right? That you could have an AI assistant on every caregiver. And as they get ready to walk into a room, it sees exactly where the caregiver is going, and it says, "Oh, this is Mrs. Jones, and here are the things that you need to be doing for her today. And here's some questions you might ask her to just have a good conversation for her." And then the caregiver goes in and it's watching and listening, and it knows that everything's done, maybe even talks into the ear and says, "Hey, good to go." And then it captures all that interaction and summarizes it in the medical records, and you've got a good picture of how they're doing. Is that crazy?
No, that's actually not tomorrow, that's today. There are companies actively doing this. I've talked to some of them. I've been pitched by some of them. I've worked with some of them that are actively acting as an assistant for the caregiver. Both, and you mentioned this, you alluded to it briefly, but I want to touch on this, to prepare the caregiver before they go have the interaction. The context is very important, because to personalize care, we need to know the medical history. We need to know their likes and dislikes. We need to make sure that we're acknowledging and understanding all of that before we have that care interaction, so that we optimize that care interaction the best we possibly can. The challenge has been caregivers have a bunch of people to serve and work with. They're running around actively. So finding ways to do that without them having to log into an EHR and scroll through a bunch of notes and everything else. So to find ways of summarizing that and making it efficient and effective, to sort of be the voice in the back of their head that says, "Oh, think about Mrs. Smith. She, yesterday she wasn't feeling well. Check and make sure she's feeling better today. She was a little dehydrated yesterday. Make sure she gets her fluids." So to sort of the nudges, the behavioral nudges, that those systems exist today, not just in acute care, but also in post-acute long-term care today. And there are more and more of them every day. So I think that's the way you keep tech behind the scenes, but contributing to sort of the front of house engagement and care delivery without replacing the caregiver.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to me because it feels like, I'm old enough now that I spend more time going to the doctor than I used to. And I'm frankly been surprised at how relatively unsophisticated the hospital systems are. None of my providers are using scribes.
Really?
And I remember going in, I took my stepfather in, he had something going on. So we went into the physician and we saw somebody who we'd never seen before. And this person had to spend like 10 minutes going back through and reviewing all the records, and didn't really know whether he got everything or not right. And it would have been so easy to have an AI agent that would just say, "Here's the important stuff you need to know about Gary.
Yes.
What else do you need to know?" And have this conversation. So
there more and more acute care systems are actively using AI transcription and note summaries and everything else. The accuracy is getting better. I know of, very, very large health systems are using these actively. And I've seen it transition just from a pilot, even about 9 or 12 months ago in the major health system that I'm a part of, just as a consumer, to my doctor, my PCP, who I saw a week or two ago, saying, "Hey, I hope it's okay. I'm using an AI transcription. It'll summarize the notes." I still go back through that. So they provide a little disclaimer there up front. But yes, they're going from, this is how the evolutionary path works, Steve. Usually it's just summarizing and sort of providing the historical, to then looking at the historical and saying, "Okay, I see some patterns, and we have to trust that there's not hallucinations happening, that there's enough accuracy there, that the bot could say, 'Hey, check in on this, this, and this,' and sort of nudge, again, behavioral nudges around, or clinical decision support around, like, ask about these things, because there's a history here that you might not have had a chance to review in the EHR to sort of improve the quality of care." So acute care tends to adopt this stuff first. This is a longer conversation around reimbursement and the greater reimbursement in acute care, allowing for some of these forward-thinking investments that long-term care really has to catch up and doesn't have that kind of funding behind it to do so. But I think there's still opportunities, and we are still actively seeing those trickle down from acute care, where it's being proven out every day, to post-acute and long-term care. And then there are also a couple of questions in the comments here I just want to address as well around education and training.
Yeah.
There are great opportunities for some of these behavioral nudges around not just compliance, but in training and education, especially with a much more transient workforce. when you're seeing more registry nurses or staff come in that don't know your environment. They know nursing, they know senior living possibly, but they don't know the specifics of your policies and how care is delivered in your environment. So there are opportunities to do in real time some sort of fine tuning of things. And there are concerns, and I just saw another comment here, I was just going to bring it up around privacy, but there are more guardrails that are being put in place. I am actively asking questions with any solution we're considering around the content, around the data, around how that privacy and the protections are in place. So there's a lot of work that we have to unpackage, and this is where I hope as an industry we need to write more white papers. We need to collaborate more. We need to open up the doors a little bit and talk about what we're doing. The rest of the world is doing this. Senior living, this is not going to be proprietary. I'll just put it that way. A lot of these things everybody's going to be doing soon enough, and it'll help us deliver better care if we can share what's working, what's not, either holistically or on a vendor by vendor basis, but really with the interest of moving this stuff forward.
So I want to talk a little bit about the sort of the vendor landscape. One of the things I know is a challenge for you as an operator, for all operators, is there are 1,000 vendors out there, right? And mostly they're selling point tools. Yes. And so it means that they don't talk to each other very well. It means it causes expenses. It means you've got to learn these multiple systems. Do you see consolidation happening? I mean, are you going to get to the point where you buy one big system? I know, let me sort of add to that. I worked for a while, 20 years ago, in the electronic design, automation to design computer chips. Yep. And when I first started selling there, same kind of thing. Today, there are sort of three big systems. There's still some point tools, but mostly things have all been plugged into a system. But then you maybe don't get the best. So what are your thoughts?
This is nothing new. I've been in tech a little over 30 years. It's hard to actually admit that. I've seen this show before in enterprise tech. I was in enterprise software and hardware, and actually did a brief stint in retail, for example. This is no different than the Oracles, the SAPs, the Microsofts of the world. Yeah. We now have the Office suite. The Office suite, as we know, was not always the Office suite. They were individual point solutions. So this is history repeating itself, just in a different industry. And yes, the same sort of collection toward the middle is happening actively for a couple of reasons. And I think some of the same reasons that happened elsewhere. There are efficiencies of scale. It's a lot easier for some of these companies to consolidate or roll these solutions up than it is for individual operators to try and buy and implement and integrate and do all of this work behind the scenes. We don't have those kinds of resources in many cases. So yes, it's the same evolution we've seen in enterprise software 20 plus years ago. So it's the same story again. It's just happening now here.
Okay, good. So let's talk a little bit more about AI. Where is AI today, and where do you think it's going to be in, I don't know what the time frame to ask, whether it should be 12 months, 18 months, or 5 years?
If you'd asked me that a couple of years ago, I would have been totally wrong and thought things would move much more slowly. And we're all learning as we go. So it is moving incredibly rapidly. The progress still seems to be accelerating at a rate that exceeds Moore's law by several factors here. Yeah. So your crystal ball is as good as mine. I think it's going to continue to evolve rapidly. I think the faster we dip our toe and then our foot in the water and get used to this and comfortable with this, establish policies, establish practices, figure out what works and what doesn't, and also what we need around all of this. It's nice to say, oh, there's some great AI tools out there. What you actually build AI tools on is data. And I just want to full stop there. Most senior living operators that I've talked to don't have a really robust data architecture, haven't thought about sort of how they're going to use it and expose the data and make sure the privacy and security is in place and everything else, other than just sort of the day-to-day operations as they exist. To use AI and maximize its efficacy, you really have to rethink how you prepare data, how you ship data around. It takes a lot more focused work there. And this is still where we are as an industry in the early days of this. But there's some exciting work already happening. The nice thing is, again, with something as simple as Microsoft Copilot, we can already take advantage of some of the basic basic tools from an efficiency standpoint day to day to summarize our meeting today, to provide us notes. The accuracy may not be perfect, but it's pretty good. So there are smaller, easier, lower risk use cases that people should be trying out today, because what that does is it teaches you things about what works, what doesn't, how to roll these out, what they require to build on top of, from a data and architecture, a privacy, a policy standpoint. So getting ourselves comfortable with this modern and sort of more rapidly evolving paradigm, and also getting better at change management, really how we roll out change across an organization. People don't talk about this enough. After 30 years in IT, technology and IT is not about the technology itself, it's how we manage the change. Because with every new technology, it's changing not just the tech, it's changing operational process. And that's what matters. It changes how people work. So the better we can get at how we absorb change and progress through change, the better we will be in utilizing these tools, maximizing their efficacy, and just seeing the benefits of them in general.
So a couple things. I was at Senior Living 100 a few weeks ago, and one of the things I came away that I was really encouraged by coming away from it is that it feels like enough people in the senior living industry have figured out how to solve the data lake problem. I think that it's still a minority of companies who are doing it, but it feels like the solutions are out there. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Absolutely. This is not new. Data lakes, data warehouses, the data architecture has been out there for decades. So it's just simply modernizing what's under the hood. So yes, it's a simple answer to your question.
Yeah. And so that was really, really encouraging. But I want to circle back to what you just talked about. And you and I have talked about this before, and we've touched on a little bit. It feels like we don't spend enough time. We say, oh, here's this great AI, we're going to put it in place. What about the teams? How do we get teams up and going? Because it's a really radically different way to work.
To me, it's not radically different, Steve. It's the way I really have always tried to approach new technology implementation, whether I've been in senior living or in any other industry, because the adoption is only as good as you're involving the people it's impacting. So this is no different. Again, this is not magic. This is not anything I came up with. I had to learn it the hard way as well. But the sooner you bring the people involved to the table so they know what's coming, they can participate in their own destiny and really be involved from the point of acquisition through the implementation, the better off everybody is, the more the tools will get used and maximized. So it's just thinking ahead, and rather just than informing people after the fact, hey, guess what? We were just doing this. And they're like, what? You're changing my job? What am I doing now? It's getting them involved in the decision-making process, if not making the decision, at least being informed about what the ramifications are, so they can provide input. They feel some sense of ownership over what's happening. We just recently selected a new EHR, for example, or we're in the process of selecting a new EHR. We brought everybody to the table, the finance and accounting teams, the clinical teams, of course, all of the different operational teams that are touched by it. As you can imagine, an EHR touches just about everybody in the senior living world. But really making sure those people participated in the early requirements decision-making process, as well as interviewing the vendors and other things, so that now, by the time eventually, we're not quite to the rollout point yet, once we get there, they will feel like that's theirs. And it's not IT sort of impacting them with some new solution we've come up with. It's something that they have chosen, they want, and they will participate in.
I think this is so important. There's a software platform that's been around for a long time. I want to be try to be as cloudy as I can on this, but I know that it's a platform a lot of people use because it does one thing very well, but the users hate it, and that basically the operators have just said, "Tough. Well, it gives us this result that we want, and we don't really care." And I really struggle with that. And now the first question is why an operator would do that, and the second is why the vendor doesn't fix the problem. But anyway.
So the answer to the first question is they haven't had much choice, and the answer to the second question is they haven't had to. They haven't had to change. There's been no impetus to change because there hasn't been much competition. That is starting to change, which I'm really happy about, because it raises the bar for everybody. It makes everything better because you see, just as an example, let's talk about EHRs, just as a generic example. And this is not just true in post-acute and long-term care. It's true in acute care as well. We see, thousands and thousands or millions of doctors saying they're tired of dealing with EHRs. They're tired of the overhead, of the administrative overhead of having to put data in. The nurses don't like them either. So in healthcare, people don't generally like the EHR very much because it's viewed as an impediment to delivery of care. Yes, you have to bill, we have to record everything, we have to make sure that we've documented everything, because if it isn't documented, it didn't happen. However, there's been no push because there was very little competition in this space. So there was no push to make it better. So everybody's just had to sort of suffer in silence. Now you see new EHR companies coming out. So there is push to say, okay, these old large EHR companies have to say, hey, we actually may need to be competitive about this and check with our users and try to make it a better user experience so that people don't hate it quite as much. Are they going to love it? We'll see, but they won't hate it as much.
Right. Yeah. And making a tool that people are going to be comfortable using, are going to feel valuable is almost more important than maybe the technology stuff behind, because if you don't get the data in or it's not accurate, how good is the rest of it? Well,
and that's not just true of data in, it's true of any solution or system or any new thing in a business. If it's not adopted, it doesn't matter. So any new change, and that's why I try to go back up to the level of change management writ large, not just sort of technology specific or vendor specific or anything else, because it's true of human behavior. If we're not sort of engaging people, they're not going to adopt it. It's not going to precipitate a change, and it won't matter.
Man, we are out of time. I got so many more questions here. I want to talk about things like predictive and dashboards and all this stuff. We're going to have to do this again. Michael, thank you very much. Amazing conversation. I love your passion. Thank you for watching, and we will be back on Friday with a great show on leadership. And again, thank you for joining me.
Steve, thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and a pleasure to try and move this stuff forward, because there's so much potential we can realize here. So let's keep going.